You know, for centuries, classical economics has had this one central character, a perfectly logical, totally predictable being. But what if that whole idea, the very foundation of the theory, is just wrong? Let's meet this so-called perfect human, and then we're going to tear him apart.
So here he is, Homo economicus. The name might sound a little fancy, but the idea behind it is pretty simple. This is a theoretical person who is always rational, completely self-interested, and every single choice they make is to get the most benefit for themselves. It's like an economic robot. It's been a really useful model in theory, but let's see how it actually stacks up against real life.
So this whole idea of Homo economicus is built on four key assumptions. You can almost think of them as his superpowers. He's got unlimited rationality, perfect information, infinite willpower, and he's driven only by self-interest. These are the pillars holding him up, and we're about to put every single one of them to the test.
All right, so to be fair, economists have always known this is a simplification. No one thinks we're actually robots, but by really digging into these core assumptions, we start to see just how differently we, as real humans, actually operate. Okay, so what about that first superpower, unlimited rationality? Are we really just walking, talking calculators, always weighing the odds perfectly? Well, a famous thought experiment called the Allais paradox puts this whole idea on trial.
I want you to imagine you have to make a choice. Option A, you get 1 million euros, guaranteed, no questions asked. Or option B, you take a gamble. There's a 10% chance you get 5 million, and 89% chance you still get the 1 million, but there's a tiny 1% chance you walk away with nothing. What do you do? If you're like most people, you take the sure thing, right? Option A. Even though, and get this, mathematically, option B has a higher expected value. Okay, got your answer? Hold on to it.
All right, round two, a different choice. Option C gives you an 11% chance at 1 million. Option D gives you a 10% chance at 5 million. Now, what do you pick? Here, most people actually switch their strategy. They take the riskier bet on option D. Seems pretty straightforward, huh? Well, this is where that whole idea of perfect rationality really starts to fall apart.
And here's the trick. Check this out. When you lay the options out like this, you can see that the only real difference between the first and second scenario is what happens in that middle 89% of cases. In the first choice, it was a guaranteed million, no matter what. In the second, it was zero. A truly rational person's preference between the other parts shouldn't change. But for most of us, it does. We pick A, then D. That's because the idea of certainty is so powerful, it completely messes with our so-called rational choice.
So it turns out our rationality is a bit shaky. But it's not just that. It's also how we handle information. Our buddy Homo economicus is supposed to look at all the facts completely objectively. But are we really objective? Or does the way information is presented, how it's framed, totally change our minds? Let's look at the classic Asian disease problem. Okay, here's the setup. A deadly outbreak is expected to kill 600 people, and you have to pick a response. Therapy A will save 200 people guaranteed. Therapy B is a gamble. A 1 in 3 chance you save everybody, but a 2 in 3 chance you save nobody. Now, when you frame it like that, in terms of saving lives, what do people do? The vast majority lock in the sure thing, Therapy A. Now watch this. We're going to ask the exact same question, just framed differently. With Therapy C, 400 people will die. That's a guarantee. With Therapy D, there's a 1/3 chance nobody dies, but a 2/3 chance everybody dies. And just like that, faced with the guaranteed loss, most people suddenly become gamblers. They reject the certain death of 400 people and take a chance on Therapy D. But, and this is the kicker, saving 200 people is exactly the same thing as 400 people dying out of 600. The outcomes are identical. Therapy A is Therapy C, and B is D. Nothing about the math changed. The only thing that changed was a single word, saved versus died. This is proof positive that we don't process facts in a neat little box. The frame changes absolutely everything. Okay, so what about his third superpower, infinite willpower? Homo economicus is supposed to be this master of delaying gratification, always making the best choice for the long run. But, I mean, if we're all being honest with ourselves, does that sound like any human you know? Yeah,
Me neither. I mean, just think about smoking. This is a perfect example of what researchers call present bias. Our brains are just hardwired to want that small reward right now way more than we want a bigger reward way off in the future. That little hit of pleasure from a cigarette today just feels so much more real and powerful than the abstract idea of being healthier decades from now. It's a fundamental breakdown of willpower.
And this whole struggle we have with thinking about the future, it connects to something else our brains are just, well, terrible at: exponential growth. You might know the old riddle about the chessboard. You put 1 grain of rice on the first square, 2 on the second, 4 on the third, and just keep doubling it. How much rice is on that last square? Our intuition just fails. The answer is, wait for it, over 18 quintillion. It's a number so big our brains can't even picture it, and it shows another massive crack in the armor of the perfectly rational human.
And that brings us to the last pillar, and maybe the most human one of all. Are we really, truly only driven by pure self-interest? A simple but absolutely brilliant experiment called the Ultimatum Game gives us a pretty clear answer.
The rules are super simple. Player 1 gets 100 euros. They have to propose a way to split that money with player 2. Then, player 2 has just one move. They can accept the offer and you both get the cash, or they can reject it and you both get nothing. Now, according to pure economic theory, player 2 should take any offer, right? Even just €1. I mean, €1 is better than €0. It's just simple logic. Or is it?
Yeah, not so fast. Because when this is tested in the real world, something amazing happens. Really low, what we'd call unfair offers, like anything less than about 30 euros, get rejected all the time. Think about that. People will literally choose to get zero money just to punish someone else for being unfair. We would rather get nothing than feel like we've been cheated. And what's even more interesting? Player 1 knows this. Most people offer a split that's pretty close to 50-50. Not because they're saints, but because they know player 2 isn't a robot. We're driven by a powerful and sometimes costly sense of fairness.
So, there you have it. One by one, we've watched the pillars holding up this perfect economic human just crumble. The model was a neat idea, a tidy starting point, but it just doesn't hold up when you look at the evidence. And what we're left with is a picture of who we really are that's, yeah, a little messier, but also a whole lot more interesting.
So let's just quickly recap what we found. First, our rationality is an absolute. It gets pushed around by things like emotion and context. Second, we don't process information objectively. How it's framed can completely change our minds. Third, our willpower is a limited resource, and we're totally biased toward what feels good right now. And finally, pure self-interest isn't the whole story, not even close. We have an innate sense of fairness that has a huge impact on our choices.
And that, right there, leaves us with this massive, world-changing question. If this simple, predictable human from the old textbooks is a myth, what does that mean for everything else? How should we build our financial systems, our public policies, even just how we manage our own lives? Now that we know we aren't robots, now that we know we are all, in fact, beautifully and predictably irrational. Figuring that out, well, that's where things get really interesting.